Welcome, curious souls, to the Macabre Emporium, your sanctuary for the unusual, the mysterious, and the appalling.
Step through our cryptic doorway into a world where secrets whisper and enigmas come to life.
I'm David.
And I'm Sarah.
Together, we're your custodians of the macabre, guiding you through tales that defy the ordinary.
Discover the untold stories, from lesser-known cases of true crime to the bizarre events that captivate us.
Join us on a journey to the shadows where the mainstream fades and the extraordinary beckons.
So whether you seek the bizarre, the eerie, or the chillingly obscure,
you're in for a treat here at Macabre Emporium.
Welcome back to Macabre Emporium. This is episode 88.
And if this is your first time joining us, welcome!
Welcome!
So, not much to say this week or whatever, so we're just going to get into it. So this is kind of true crimey and somewhat weird kind of paranormal-ish type things because of how it first plays out. But we're going to talk about the Hammersmith Ghost today.
Hammersmith?
Yep.
Okay.
It is over in the United Kingdom.
Why does that not surprise me?
All right.
I feel like a lot of paranormal comes from the UK area.
Well, you got to think that world's much older than ours is.
Yeah.
Our country is still a baby compared to, over there with world history.
That's true.
All right. So Hammersmith is actually a district area in West London, England. It has a long history, being first recorded in 1294, but it has become known as the administrative center of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, and identified in the London Plan as one of the 35 major centers in the greater London area. But our story today takes place back well before it was known for all that. Before London was a metropolis full of business and skyscrapers back in the 1800s, when it was a tough, dirty, and chaotic capital of England. Think Sherlock Holmes or Sweeney Todd, and you've got a pretty good idea what it was like. This is the same area that is soon to be haunted in the future by a real monster, Jack the Ripper, who would also terrorize this borough in almost a century, but at this time in the early 1800s, the residents were haunted by a different evil.
Okay.
At the end of October and into the beginning of November of 1803, the first sightings of a ghost were being reported. It's fitting that the sightings started during the month that they celebrated their version of All Hallows Eve, sometimes known as Snap-Apple Night, where they had a festival to mark the end of harvest season at the beginning of the darker half of the year. The darker half of the year would be indeed much darker for Hammersmith in more than one way this year.
You said Snap-Apple?
Mm-hmm.
Huh, okay.
The sightings of the ghost were mostly around the churchyard, and the ghost was definitely not a Casper the Friendly type of ghost. Each time someone encountered the ghost, it seemed like he is getting worse and worse and more severe. The ghost was not shy and not only seemed like he wanted to be seen, but also was determined to attack everyone who saw it.
Ooh, so almost like Poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The descriptions of the ghost were varied, some saying the apparition was very tall and dressed in all white, but it is also said that he would sometimes be in a calfskin garment with horns and large glass eyes. Everyone was under the belief that the ghost was a man who had committed suicide exactly 12 months earlier by slashing his throat. He was buried in the churchyard, even though it was contemporary belief at the time that suicide victims should not be buried in holy grounds because their soul would never be at rest. They believed this so deeply that it was actually illegal for suicide victims to be buried on consecrated grounds until 1882, given that the ghost was mostly seen around the churchyard and the man would be buried there, that this just furthered their beliefs of it.
Yeah.
Stories began to really circulate in the area with multiple people saying that they had physically been assaulted by the ghost. In late November, one woman was attacked when crossing near the churchyard after dark. She claimed she saw something rising slowly from the tombstones, and when he stood all the way up, his stature was commanding, and he seemed abnormally tall and completely stark white. So this sounds kind of like the ghost hoax we covered in previous episodes. She panicked with a deer in the headlights reaction, unable to run immediately, but by the time her feet allowed her to move, it was too late. The ghost was upon her. He grabbed her and overtook her, pressing her into his arms. That was the last thing she remembered, and she fainted, and it was not until many hours later some neighbors found her and led her home. Disoriented, and she described what happened, and they laid her to rest in her bed. Fortunately, she never rose again, dying a few days later of what they claimed was fright. It said that only a few days later, a pregnant woman met the same exact fate, dying of fright days after her encounter with the Hammersmith Ghost.
Now, is that something that actually, like, can you actually die from being afraid of something?
It's possible. I would think so. Maybe it's something we need to look to another episode because, you can die from a broken heart, basically, because of the stressors on that and the emotional stress from that. So, I mean.
So it could be like maybe heart attack kind of thing because you panic so much.
Possibly. And also life expectancy wasn't nearly as high as it is now, too. So.
Oh, yeah.
So farting in the wind the wrong way probably could kill you in these times.
Farting in the wind?
Yep.
Shit. I'd be dead long time ago because of you.
And I would be dead because of you.
Girls don't fart.
Whatever. Don't let her lie like that. A man who was a wagoneer was taking 16 passengers through the area at night when he got so spooked by the ghost, he lost control of the 8 horses pulling the wagon. The passengers all feared for their life, but ultimately survived to tell the tale. Another man, Thomas Groom, who have actually testimony form, recalled his encounter in detail. The brewer's servant was walking home with a coworker who believed all the ghost stories being told and was nervous about the walk. His coworker was walking briskly due to his paranoia, while Thomas strolled along with a coat under one arm and his hands in his pockets, keeping pace with his companion and obviously not concerned about the Hammersmith ghost. Suddenly, Thomas was grabbed from behind. Unable to see what had grabbed him, he let out a startled cry and his colleague spun around and yelled, "What is it?" Before Thomas could even reply, the ghost spun around, or at least him, and perhaps was scared off by the presence of another person. Thomas was quoted explaining it was, The ghost gave me a twist around and I saw nothing. I gave a bit of push out of it with my fist and felt something soft like a great coat." By Christmas time, many local men have started patrolling the area at night, wanting and hoping to catch this apparition. There was no police force at the time, so no one else was coming to the rescue to do something about this violent entity, spirit, whatever you want to call it.
And this was like pre-Victorian era, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
Residents were certain evil had come to visit their town, and their feeling of fear was taking over. Unfortunately, there was just not enough men to patrol every part of the graveyard, and even when they were out, attacks and sightings still happened elsewhere, almost as if the ghost knew where to be and where not to be. On December 29th, William Girdler, one of the men who was a night watcher, finally caught a glimpse of the figure. He immediately gave chase, following it down the narrow lanes. When he started getting closer, the figure threw off its shroud and managed to escape. William said that he seemed to disappear in thin air. The fact that the ghost threw off a shroud seemingly to gain speed started getting some of the townsfolk thinking. The fact that one man got so close, it not only inspired more men to take the streets at night to look, but people started to believe perhaps that this was not a spiritual being. Maybe this was a monster made of flesh, maybe a human, even a citizen from their town.
Yeah, because I wouldn't see a ghost needing to take off a piece of clothing to go faster.
Well, yeah, it's like the old saying about Counter-Strike Source, everybody runs faster with the knife because in that game you literally, if you had your knife out, you actually could run faster. So it's like reverse that.
A video game.
No, it's like getting rid of the shroud so you can run faster, but you always can run faster with the knife in Counter-Strike.
Makes no sense.
Anyway. After 2 holidays now ruined by the fear and an ominous presence, a local excise officer named Francis Smith was determined to rid the neighborhood of the menace. At the young age of 29, he thought he'd be the one to catch this ghost. On January 3rd, 1804, around 10:30 p.m., William Girdler, the one who had caught the glimpse of the ghost in December, was making rounds when he ran into Francis. He was armed with a shotgun, and he told William he was going to find this supposed ghost. By now, the majority of the people believed it was a person acting as a ghost. William wished him luck and said he would check in with him around 11 p.m. and they would take the ghost if possible. Just past 11, a shot rang out, and William ran to the scene. When he arrived, 2 other neighbors named John Locke and George Stowe were already there along with Anne Millwood. They described Francis as seeming very agitated. A body lay on the ground wearing all white that was now stained with blood from the gunshot wound to the left lower jaw. Did somebody finally catch this ghost? The man who was shot was Thomas Millwood. He was a bricklayer and his uniform was white linen trousers, white flannel waistcoat, and a white apron. Just the previous Saturday, Thomas had frightened 2 ladies and a gentleman traveling in a horse-drawn cart. The man yelled out, "There goes the ghost," to which Thomas replied, "I am no more a ghost than you," and offered to punch him in the head as proof. When Thomas told his wife of the encounter, she begged him to change his uniform or to at least to wear an overcoat over his white clothes. Thomas brushed it off and chose not to take her advice. On the night of January 3rd, Thomas was visiting his parents and sister. After his parents retired to their rooms and he stayed up with his sister until it was time to go meet his wife to walk her home from work. And as soon as Anne saw him off, she heard Francis yelling, "Damn you! Who are you? And what are you? Damn you, I'll shoot you if you don't speak." The challenge was followed almost immediately by a gunshot. Anne called out to Thomas. When she got no reply, she grew worried and ran out to find him. That was when she found him on the ground and his face was horribly disfigured. She held his hand and tried to get him to speak, but when she got no response, she knew he was dead.
So they shot this dude in the face just because he had on an all-white uniform.
Because they thought it was the ghost. Knee-jerk reaction. The neighbors told Francis to go home and get out of there, but Francis could not leave. He was distressed and upset upon realizing he shot a man. The constable arrived and arrested Francis, and the body of Thomas was taken to a surgeon, Mr. Flower, for autopsy. Could not find a first name. The autopsy revealed the gunshot had severed the spinal cord, killing Thomas instantly. Only 2 days later, the ghost was revealed, a local boot and shoemaker named John Graham, as he admitted it was him. He said he adopted the disguise to frighten his apprentices. He was retaliating against them for telling his children ghost stories, which terrified them. A little bit extreme for, your apprentice just messing with your kids.
Right. Like an innocent man was shot in the face. Jeez.
After his surrender, the magistrates were unsure of the law and what legal position to take. He was granted bail, and they were supposed to be seeking guidance, but there never was anything else on the record about him. Francis Smith was tried for the willful murder. He admitted to firing the fatal shot, but entered a not guilty plea. Many people came forward to testify the good nature of Francis and that the entire town was engulfed in fear. John Locke and William Girdler both testified that seemed in a state of distress, a genuine remorse that he cooperated and went willing with the constable. During the trial, Thomas's mother-in-law, Mrs. Fulbrook, testified that she warned him to change his clothing. Mrs. Fulbrook would testify at the trial as, "On Saturday evening, he and I went home. For he lived with me. He said he had frightened 2 ladies and a gentleman who were coming along the terrace in a carriage. For that the man said he dared to say, 'There goes the ghost.' That he said there was no more than a ghost than he was, and asked him, using a bad word, 'Did you want a punch to the head?' I begged for him to change his dress. Thomas says, I, as there is a piece of work about this ghost, and your clothes look white. Pray do put on your great coat that you may not run any danger." Oh my God, I hate old-timey English so much.
I know you do.
That's what I get for copying and pasted it for I do it and screw up the quote.
It's whatever. You did what you needed to.
And from here on out, I really should just change it so it actually makes sense in today's English.
But then it wouldn't be...
Right. Let's just put a disclaimer out there. It's like, hey, I'm actually changing it to where we can understand it on this old-time English. Here's the link if you actually want to look it up. But I don't know. I say that now, but I'm sure I'll forget the next time we do a story this old again.
So you're basically going to do the opposite of what I did for the cross stitch I made for D, where I took "That's What She Said" and made it old-timey, "'Tis what she proclaimed."
Yeah, I forgot that you made that. Anne testified that even though Francis had called out a warning, he fired his weapon almost immediately, giving no time for explanation or talk. Francis testified in his defense, saying that he acknowledged he knew he was not dealing with a ghost, and he felt that he gave the man 2 warnings and plenty of time to step back, but he kept advancing, and Francis feared for his safety, and he said, "My lord, I went out with good intention, and when this unhappy affair took place, I did not know what I did, speaking to the deceased twice and he not answering. I was so much agitated, I do not know what I did. I solemnly declared that my innocence and that I had no intention to take away the life of the unfortunate deceased, any man, whatever."
So what if he was deaf and he honestly didn't hear? I mean, that could have been an option. Obviously, he could hear because he heard his wife, pleading with him to put a different coat on.
He also told this guy, "Do you want a punch in the head to prove it?"
Right. But I'm just saying, the guy that shot him wouldn't have known if he was deaf or not.
Right. But, saying you want to punch in the head to prove it, that's, threatening to use force, potential deadly force, basically.
But he said that to the 2 people in the carriage.
Right.
Not to the guy that shot him.
But I'm just saying, using it as an example.
Well, yeah.
He could still hear people. He wasn't deaf or anything. We're going to keep going on. We're going to get stuck on this.
Yeah.
The chief judge, Lord Chief Baron Sir Archibald MacDonald. Sounds like something I would make up for a Victorian episode.
I was really hoping you would just call him like Lord Farquaad.
So seriously, titles and names like that. One, sounds like something I would make up for explanation in a Victorian style episode. Two, sounds like a scammer.
Say the name again.
Lord Chief Baron Sir Archibald MacDonald.
It really does sound like a name you would make up.
But he advised the jury that malice was not required of murder, only intent to kill, and he was quoted as saying, "I should betray my duty and injure the public security if I did not persist in asserting that this is a clear case of murder. If the facts to be proved to your satisfaction, all killing whatever amounts to murder unless justified by the law or in self-defense, in case of some involuntary acts or some sufficiently violent provocation, it becomes manslaughter. Not one of these circumstances occur here." The Lord Chief Baron also stated that Francis was not acting in self-defense and the killing was not an accident. There was no reason to justify the shooting. He was not being provoked. And even if he had shot the correct person, that would not give him the reason, as the haunting was only a misdemeanor. The jury deliberated for only an hour and returned with the verdict of manslaughter. The Lord Chief rejected this and said they may only find him guilty on murder or acquit him. So another very short deliberation, they returned with the guilty verdict. Francis Smith was sentenced to death by hanging, and it was to be carried out on the following Monday. He immediately fell to the ground and wailed. Knowing how much the public was invested in this case, they knew how many people stood up for Francis. The Lord Chief quickly added, "The case shall be referred to His Majesty," immediately being the king. By 7 p.m. that evening, the sentence had been reprised, and he was commuted to 1 year's imprisonment with hard labor instead. On July 14th, he was granted a full pardon. This case is not only interesting, but it has brought up many debates among lawmen, bringing up the question on whether acting on a mistaken belief with a sufficient defense to a criminal charge. It wasn't settled until 180 years later in the 1984 matter of Regina versus Williams Gladstone. Williams had attacked a man who was using excessive violence on a youth. He hit and injured the attacker, saving the boy. Fortunately, he misread the situation and the youth had been caught stealing and the man was attempting to apprehend him. Williams was charged and convicted on assault inflicting actual bodily harm. Williams appealed his case, and after stating that this debate was a very tiring one, spoken of more than anyone would want to about it, Lord Chief Justice Lang cleared the issue with this statement. In a case of self-defense where self-defense of the prevention of crime is concerned, if the jury concluded that the defendant believed or may have believed that he was being attacked or that a crime was being committed and the force was necessary to protect himself or to prevent the crime, prosecution have provided not their case. If, however, the defendant's alleged belief was mistaken, and if this mistake was an unreasonable one, there may be a peaceful reasoning for concluding that the belief was not honestly held, it should be rejected, even if the jury concluded that the mistake was an unreasonable one. If the defendant may genuinely have been laboring under it, he is entitled to rely upon it.
Okay. That was a whole lot of words.
Whole lot of words kind of circling around back in itself.
Yes.
It's like that meme with all the like equations and stuff floating around the face, and then they're just like looking back and forth, eyes bouncing around looking at it.
That's what I feel like I just looked like. Like I'm trying to compute everything you just said. Yeah.
The appeal was granted and his conviction was overturned. The decision was approved by the Privy Council in Beckford versus the Queen in 1988. And it was written into law into the Criminal Justice and Immigration Act of 2008, Section 76. It's crazy how to think one old man in a sheet trying to get revenge sparked a historical change in the legal system for England.
Huh.
That's the Hammersmith Ghost.
Well, he started a whole world of shit, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so it's, like I said, it sounded almost like ghost hoaxing gone wrong, basically.
I mean, yeah. Someone died. I'm sure that was not...
Right. Well,
you know, the plan.
And like, I don't remember, was that a Halloween episode? Our original bonus Halloween episode? I talked about ghost hoaxing.
Maybe it could have been just an October episode.
I can't remember. That was like a year, 2 years ago. I don't know, but yeah, but you know, the ghost hoaxing when people would just dress up with ghosts and shit just to be fucking goofy up until World War I.
Yeah, it could be.
It sounds like that's what it started off to be, but shit just got bad real quick.
This was like the precursor to ghost hoaxing.
Mm-hmm. If you heard that thump, Sarah's in here spanking the ghost again because he's loafing on the table, almost asleep.
He didn't even move.
And he didn't even care. His eyes are so closed, he didn't even flinch or anything. But it is what it is.
He's a dope.
He's something, all right, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, you ready to get out of the Emporium for the day?
Sure.
So until next time.
Remember to creep it real and spank your kitty.
Oh my. You take that how you guys want it. Bye.
Bye. Join our Facebook group by searching Macabre Emporium. Like and subscribe on YouTube at Macabre Emporium Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Macabre Emporium Pod. Follow us on Twitter at Macabre Emporium. If you have any stories of the paranormal, your local true crime, or weird history that you would like us to look into and possibly do an episode on, email us at macabreemporiumpod@gmail.com. And remember to follow, rate, review, and share whenever and wherever you can to help us grow our podcast.